Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Natupreneur Movement. And this week I am excited to share with you an amazing woman who we've kind of crossed paths in and out for the past, say, about 7 years. And it's been wonderful to see the beautiful organic transition and amazing awesomeness kind of sprout through time and time again. And now Nikki is back on the scene helping amazing entrepreneurs with their branding and their marketing in a way that is extraordinary. And she really changed my life about 7 years ago, all from one tiny little opt-in. And this is the interesting thing about being an entrepreneur. You never, ever know where your one little piece of content is going to go. So welcome, Nikki.
Thank you for having me. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you.
So I really have been moved by the opt-in that I got to download many years ago. And it's really formed part of the way that I explore what my brand is and what that looks like in so many different facets of our business. But I really wanted to kind of dive in with first how you got into branding, essentially.
Yes, so my journey started back in 1991, actually, back in the 90s. And my mum at the time owned 4 Benetton shops. And so I think in the 90s, that was just about as cool as it could get.
So cool. But simple, right? Simple and effective, Benetton. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had these stores and they were franchises. So she opened these 4 Benetton stores and it was, the 90s. And the advertising was really controversial for its time. So they had, these huge images of a black woman feeding a white baby and nuns kissing and colored condoms. And they had this huge vision around uniting the world. So it was called the United Colors of Benetton. And I found it really, really fascinating that it was my first experience of a brand that basically had a vision bigger than something that it sold. And I obviously started to have a relationship with this. So I'd cover my textbooks in all these different advertising images, and I'd have conversations at school. And I really, really fell in love with the fact that I realized that a brand wasn't a logo. It was the first time that I realized a brand was a relationship. And it's
cool. I want to dive deeper into that later on too. It's a really big deal and a really amazing differentiation, because a lot of people when they're first starting out in business think that your brand is your logo and your colors, but it's so much more than that. Yeah.
So many people think that. And look, it is, I think, because brand is intangible for a lot of people, that there's not one clear, recognized definition of what brand is. To me, it's an emotion and it's a feeling and it's everything that you stand for and everything that people perceive and think about you is your brand. And it's that meaning that people attach to you. It's where they kind of store you away, and what compartment do they put you in their mind, and what meaning do they attach to that. That to me is your brand. And there's so many pieces that go into that. So that was my first experience back then. And then I was super passionate about it. So I went on to university and I studied fashion marketing and branding. I got my first gig working for Levi's in marketing. And that was a really interesting time as well, because their brand was actually in decline at that time. They had gone through this, height of like 80s and 90s of being really cool, and then they'd lost sight of their target audience, and they were kind of in this bit of a decline and looking at how they could turn things around. So that was another interesting experience. And then I went on for the next 15 years. I've worked for lots of different brands and with lots of different brands, both in-house and in agencies. So Nike, Levi's, IBM, Billabong, Red Bull, lots of different big brands, and absolutely have immersed myself, I guess, in that consumer psychology side of things. Like, what makes people want to have a relationship with your brand?
What a great question to ask.
And then I left my corporate job in must be 2014 or maybe.
Yep. Yeah, it was just a little bit before then, I think.
Yes, I keep losing track of when it is actually. My kids were fairly young at that time, so probably, like a lot of people, had my kids, thought that they wasn't going to change anything. that I just go back to work.
We'll just chuck them in the backpack, travel the world, and continue our corporate job.
Yeah, totally. And I remember now having those conversations with people that had kids and them just kind of looking at me like, yeah, you don't know what's coming. And so I went back to work, and I found it really hard to have that balance. I found it hard to be a great mum and, you know, great at my job at the same time. And I pretty much felt like I was failing in every area for quite a while. And so I think that was around the time that probably I stepped out and I met you. I did, you know, what a lot of people do, and I launched myself into looking at, you know, what I could do online. And I realized that really I could share my knowledge and share what I do and help people and actually make more of a difference, because I'd be working with smaller businesses where you actually see the impact of the work you've done, rather than in a massive corporation where you're so kind of divorced from the end outcome. So I stepped out and started my own business, and I guess the rest is history. I have been doing that joyfully for quite a while now. Fit it very flexibly around my kids, take on clients that I love working with and projects that I'm passionate about. And yeah, I really love helping people build their brands and make an impact in the work that they do and get it out into the world.
I love that. So what did you find was the biggest distinction from working with, you know, these massive corporations that have huge big boards and big decision makers and things like that in the Nike, Red Bull, kind of Levi's, to, you know, say practitioners, solo business owners? What is the really big distinction there for you?
Yeah, so I think there's a few distinctions. Like, first of all, big organizations really get brand because they know that their brand is a saleable asset. They know that that's where their equity is. So they spend a lot of time in the strategy and ideation phase and really understanding their customer, because there's a lot of money on the line. You don't put something out into the world if you haven't, you know, researched it. And I think in small business, we quite often skip that step, because sometimes people are going into business because it's just a personal passion. They really want to do something. They set out and they don't think about the strategic foundations of their business. But the second thing that I think is really important, when you are a small business, you're so invested in your clients or your customers and what you can do for them. It's actually much more exciting to work in that phase with a business owner, because they can see, okay, if I really identify who I want to connect with and how I talk to them and how I can serve them and how that they experience my brand, they can see the impact. Whereas in a big organization, you know, you work on something and then, you know, 6 months down the line, a campaign might come out and you don't really see the impact of the work that you've been doing. But I would say there's definitely a mindset difference. And I would say in the online world, there's this kind of proliferation of a message around how everything just happens overnight, how it's a short game. And building a brand and building a business is a long-term game. And, you know, you start with a small seed and you grow and you grow and you grow. And I think sometimes in small business, we expect to be at the 10-year mark when we're at the 1-year mark. So that's a hard mindset shift to get around.
Yeah, it's one of the big ones that I've been listening to on quite a number of other podcasts recently, that we do have this weird, like, strange thing that happens in our brains, even though we're listening to somebody or watching, you know, looking at their website and they have hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content on there. All of a sudden we think they're an overnight success just because we happen to have found them overnight. And you know, even from their perspective, they've been working at it for 10 to 15 years. And all of a sudden, it's just reached that tipping point that other people start to know them, or they've started, you know, they've created their opus of a book that's come out. But that didn't come from nowhere. It came from years and years of building their brand, continually having these conversations and building their relationship and rapport with the people who were interested in engaging with their stuff, and then continuing to see what that was like. So yeah, it's fascinating kind of, I guess, a juxtaposition on how what's perceived and what is actually in reality happening for those businesses.
Yes. And there's a lot of that nowadays. I think there's probably two things as well that our lives are so on demand that we don't like waiting for things. So we expect success to come to us as quickly as, you know, watching Netflix. I remember talking to my kids the other day about, you know, how we would wait a week for a TV show to come on when I was younger. And you'd have to be there at the time that it came on. And now they can just turn on the TV, and if it doesn't, you know, if it's buffering for, you know, 20 seconds, it's the end of the world. And I think that we are so used to having everything so quickly that we think that's how success happens, and we think that's how brands are built. And it isn't that way. There are some people that seem to spring out of nowhere. Usually they're a flash in the pan and they disappear very quickly. It might be a quick fad that appears, but anyone that you see out there that, you know, has a best-selling book or is out speaking on stages has years and years of work behind what they've done, and they've spent a long time to understand their audience and grow their audience. And they've spent the time, I think, as well, focusing down in the beginning, like really niching down in the beginning and focusing on who they serve before they expand out to this big, broad audience. And that's where a lot of people get tripped up, because I think they see someone who has many different strands to their business, maybe lots of different messages, and they, in their mind, think to themselves, oh, I'll go out and do all the same things. But everyone starts from a really small seed, one small idea and maybe one small offering.
And one person.
Momentum. Yes, one person.
We all start with one person that we're talking to, and then it becomes 2 people, and then it becomes 3 people, and it becomes 4 people, but they all have some type of connective link. So I'd love to hear your perception on that, because in our tribe, we have one of the biggest things that the Naturepreneur tribe have an issue with, particularly at the beginning, is how do we niche, and do we really need to? Because we're here to help everybody. What's your take on that?
Oh, it's a big one. It's a big one. I could talk for hours about this, but I think essentially, if you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to nobody. And from a basic human brain point of view, we walk around and we're saturated with noise and messages coming at us from the TV and our phones and everything. And we systematically kind of delete information that we do not perceive as relevant to us. We look at something, and if we don't think that that message speaks to us, then we just ignore it. So if you're trying to catch everybody with your net, then you tend to catch nobody. And I think people do it because they look at someone else's middle, like I said, and compare it to their beginning. And I always like to use Nike as this example, because they started out with one running shoe. So they went to round to athletic race meets with one shoe that they designed. It was a coach and his athlete. They'd done this together, and they sold that shoe. And when they got really good at selling that shoe, then they went into other areas. They didn't do golf, tennis, soccer, every sport under the sun all at once. They became known for one thing, and then they expanded out. And I also think that becoming known for one thing doesn't mean that you can't bring other people in. It just means that your message hooks the people it's meant to hook. And you will pull other people along. So for example, I talk about a physiotherapist. So there's a physio on the Northern Beaches. She's a pelvic physio for women. She specializes in women after childbirth, pre-pregnancy, anyone with kind of pelvic instability that causes lots of different problems, can cause back problems. She's amazing at what she does, but my dad also goes to see her. Yeah. So he's not a woman and he hasn't had children, but she's really good at what she does, and I know that she's great. So she comes highly recommended, and every time you go, there are men in there, but her message and her website speaks to one person. It speaks to women. It speaks to people with a specific problem. And when you do that, you will really laser in and find you connect with people more effortlessly. And it's much easier for you to become known for something.
Yep.
It's hard to become known for lots of different things. It's also hard for people to refer people to you. So if you've got clients and you want, lots of people, the Holy Grail is getting lots of great referrals. If I can't send somebody to you as a practitioner because I can't really explain how you can help them because you maybe do like 50 things, it's just not easy. If I can say, you really must go and, see Jane, she's amazing at sorting your hormones out after you've had kids and you're really, really tired, and she'll help you get your energy back. And it's usually, something to do with your hormones. Then that's really clear as to the problem she solves. If I kind of just, have a million things you could go for, she's not going to get recommended over anybody else. So I think it's really important to focus on the problem that you can solve and can solve really well, and create your own method or system of solving that problem that you can become known for. And once you become really good at that, then you can add other things into it. But it's much easier to cut through and also to serve the smallest viable market. It's also much more profitable.
Absolutely.
But I understand why people find it difficult, because it's counterintuitive. You think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go so small. Are there people with this problem? But there's billions of people on the planet, and some businesses are super, super, super niche. In the early stages, you don't want to go so niche that no one's ever going to find you, but you need to really think about a problem you can solve and intersect that with the audience that you can solve it for, and do that really well before you expand out.
That is beautifully clear. Find the problem that you can solve and go with that. And this is the interesting thing that I find with a lot of practitioners. We mix up the idea of our modalities, and our modalities are just our tools and our ways of doing different things like naturopathy, nutrition, herbals, and homeopathy and other things. We mix all of those up with the problem that we can solve, and we think that we're selling the qualification that we have, but in actual fact, we're selling the problem that we can solve, and then people come to us for those other things. So with your example with Jane, for instance, we send everybody to Jane because of the links with hormones and energy, but we'll also send people to Jane because, she's usually working on hormones and energy, but she's such a great naturopath, or she is so great with physical representation, or she's so great with testing that I would send my dad to her as well.
Totally. And I think the problem that we feel when we focus down is that we feel we have to focus, like you said, on the tool that we use. But when you focus on the outcome, your tools are your tools. Like, you could solve that outcome in a number of different ways. So for example, you could be helping someone with hormonal health and you could be a naturopath, but someone else could be doing it, and they could be a kinesiologist, or they could be a massage therapist, or an energetic healer, whatever it might be. You don't need to sell the tool you use. You need to sell the transformation. So I have a person who has this problem. They're stuck with this problem and they want to get to this point. They want to feel X, Y, Z. I can help take them there, and I use my tools to help them, but I'm going to sell them the transformation. I'm not going to sell them, well, I do timeline therapy and I do this and I do that, because most people don't even know what they are anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people still don't understand the difference quite often between, a naturopath and a herbalist, or a homeopath and a naturopath,
And that isn't what they're looking for. They don't want to figure that out. They want to figure out the problem that they come to you with. Yeah.
So I'm not looking around if I've got an issue with my back, particularly for a physio. I'm looking for someone who can help with sciatic pain. Yep. Do someone who's really good with sciatic pain? Now, that could be an acupuncturist, it could be a physio, it could be, a number of different people, but I'm looking for someone to solve my problem. And if people have a problem, particularly relating to health, it's usually painful and they want it solving. So you need to be that shining beacon that's like, hey, I understand that problem you have, and I can help you solve that really quickly, rather than I can throw all these different things at you and you're supposed to work out what they are and what they mean and how they can help you.
Yeah, definitely. So the other fascinating thing that I the reason that I cottoned onto you in the first place was your work with archetypes, and it's not only solving the problem, but it's you and your differentiation and your particular qualities and the way that you and your brand come across that makes you stand out from the crowd. So if everybody's a naturopath, or if everybody is solving sciatica, there's 50 practitioners solving sciatica, we can be doing it in a on-brand way, and that's a beautiful way of describing things. A lot of people won't have heard that before. On-brand, as in you're utilizing your particular way and your business's particular style and your particular way of building a relationship to actually solve the problem. And archetypes are an amazing way of doing that. Can you express that a little, can you expand on that? Because I don't think it's just a matter of I solve sciatica and I am a naturopath. It is something more than that when it comes to your uniqueness in branding.
Yes, and it's so funny you said that, because I've just brought I'm just about to bring my brand archetype test back.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I've had so many comments about it lately saying, where's it gone? So it's interesting to know how much it has helped people. And I use it as the first point of working with anybody, because archetypes, essentially, there's 12 different archetypes, and I guess you could call them the software for the soul. In essence, we as humans, we all kind of default to certain personalities or archetypes, and we are naturally attracted to people that are either like us or we aspire to be like them. So when we see somebody or when we meet somebody, quite often we make those assumptions really, really quickly within those first few seconds of, landing on someone's website or speaking to someone at a conference. And it's those subtleties in their personality and the way they present themselves that speak to, the subconscious part of our brain. So archetypes are a really easy way to differentiate yourself from somebody who does the same thing. And I did a Facebook Live about this the other day, actually, because it was really, really interesting. I was I'd had to go to a church service for my son's school, and I hadn't been for ages, and it was this big new modern church, and their marketing was spectacular. And essentially, they're selling the same thing as the church that's 2 kilometers down the road. They're both selling the same message. There isn't even a difference really in the message. It's how they translate that message to their audience that makes them different. And they were really playing on this archetype of, the leader, and their marketing was very, very slick and smooth, and the production in the church was, it appealed to the people that everyone was dressed up, everyone was dressed up to the nines, looking amazing, because it was about that kind of prestige message that came across. Whereas the little church down the road, that my mum goes to, and this little old lady's making their cakes, and no one's really going through the door, but they're giving the same message out when you get in there. It's just the way they deliver it is in different ways, and they're pulling on different archetypes. So if you're, a naturopath and you have the explorer archetype as your primary archetype, which is around freedom and, finding freedom and going on the journey. And there's different, it's a totally different way to if you were that leader archetype, which is all around, improving your health so you can optimize, your performance and be a peak performance as a CEO or something. They're different, they're different messages and different personalities you draw upon, but essentially you might be doing almost the same process to get the result for people. So it's a really good way to bring texture to your brand, to bring in your personality, to look at, okay, what are my superpowers? What are my differences? How will people connect with me? If I'm this archetype, my customers are likely to connect with this. So what kind of words should I be using? What kind of tone of voice would I use? How will I appeal to them? How will I price and package things? All of those things really come from looking at your archetype. It's a really good starting point to identify, brand personality and who you are, because a lot of people struggle with that piece. Because as I said, brand can be so intangible to people. They're like, I don't really know where to start. Like, how am I different? What's my personality? So it really gives you a good springboard to look at the purpose and the vision for your brand, what kind of values you'd have, and what other people will resonate with.
Yeah. And I mean, I could talk about this all day, and it was such a freaky thing for me to first explore. I remember, trying to understand marketing from being somebody who had multiple degrees in the human body. I just didn't quite get what on earth this whole thing was about. And when you start diving into it, it's such an amazing thing to see how we connect as humans and our minds get triggered by certain things and what we're attracted to, and that there is a voice to it. There is some styles that go with it. There is the types of images that go with it. And then, when it comes to business, there's so many different touch points and places that you can express that same brand so that the right people are attracted to you, and your message can really change and help somebody in a way that instead of speaking to everybody, you can actually get to the people that need to hear it, especially from you. So I absolutely love your work. And that brings us to the final question for today is NATX 2020. And we are so excited because Nikki Clark is going to be speaking at NATX 2020. We are super pumped, because you're going to be speaking about branding there.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Super excited.
And that's what I love about your work. But I want to know what you love about your work, because that's the theme of NATX 2020.
I think what I love about my work is being able to unravel things for people and give them the clarity that maybe they didn't have themselves. So looking at something to me, which I can speak to somebody and I can see the gold immediately. So they might have this messy kind of message and they'll come to me and they'll tell me all these things they do and they don't know how to pull it together and they don't think they know how to, do marketing. And very quickly I can kind of unravel that and make sense of it and give it back to them and say, this is how you can connect with your audience. This is who you are, and this is how you can speak, and this is how you can put your packages together. And seeing that light turn on for people and then seeing the results that they get from that just gives me a massive amount of joy. Like, I'm such a geek about it. I get really, really excited when I'm working on people's brand and their brand blueprint and their marketing plan. And my husband's always like, oh my gosh, it's such a dork. But I really, really get a massive amount of joy of taking that kind of, mess in someone's head of not knowing where it's all going, and then putting it in front of them and then going, oh my God, I get that. That's exactly who I am. You've totally nailed it. And it just brings me, huge joy to then see them get success as well, because people have got such great gifts that are hidden, such great talent that isn't being seen out there. And, just because marketing stands in the way. Because you're a business owner, you're great at what you do. You don't need to be amazing at marketing. You just need to know, you need someone to help you with it. So I enjoy doing that missing piece of their business.
Beautiful. And I enjoy you doing what you enjoy. And I think that's the way that entrepreneurs in particular work best. The fact that we can be in our gifts and our talents and draw upon the tribe of other entrepreneurs who are in their gifts and their talents, and where it overlaps, I think there's just a crazy amount of amazingness that happens. And I'm super excited to introduce you live at NATX 2020. So thanks so much for today, Nikki. Where can, if anyone wants to look you up, particularly because the archetype's going to come out soon, whereabouts can they find you on the interwebs?
They can find me at nikkilou.clark.com. So NIKKILOU.com. And the brand archetype quiz will be live on my homepage. So that will pop up and they can take the quiz and get their report to their inbox.
Yay! Thanks so much, Nikki. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.